Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. At Latitude Festival in Suffolk, amongst the huge tents, arenas and outdoor performance spaces, there was a small caravan which housed a production called Mobile by the Paper Birds that was performed by a single actress for just 8 people at a time. After Latitude was over, I spoke to Paper Birds producer Bonnie Mitchell and performer Kylie Walsh, and I asked Kylie, who are the Paper Birds?
The Paper Birds is a devising theatre collective that was formed in 2003 when we graduated from the University of Leeds. We set up our company in Leeds and we made lots and lots of our shows there. We are currently touring a show called Mobile, which is it's a site-specific piece that takes place in the interior of a caravan. So it's a really small, intimate performance for audiences of up to 8 at a time.
It's site-specific, but you take the site with you, which must be unusual. But in a sense, that makes it easier in that you don't have to cope with whatever environment quite as much. But I saw it at Latitude, and we're in the great sunshine, actually, before we went in, which is great for a festival. But then once we're inside the caravan, we're in your territory, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right. What's really magic about the caravan is that it's able to almost shut out the world outside of it. It kind of pulls you into its own little magical atmosphere, and which is really handy because what's great is that when we tour it to new venues, we don't have to spend all day rigging lights and, getting the focus right and checking the sound because all that's already in existence. It's already rigged. Actually, what we spend our time doing is balancing the caravan, making sure that it's not on a tilt, trying to find some flat ground, trying to find some nice clean power because sometimes it can cut out. So there's different, I guess, challenges that touring in a caravan brings.
You play the one character that we see, Cindy. We eventually find out that's her name, but I had trouble actually trying to describe what it was about when I came to write my review, and that can sometimes be a bad thing, but in this case it was just because there's so many different things. There isn't a through line of narrative as such. But how would you describe what Mobile is about?
Well, I guess that the label that we give it is that Mobile is a play about social mobility. But often I find that kind of falls on deaf ears. People are a bit like, they kind of switch off because it's a bit of a label. So how I try and articulate it is that it's a play about class, and it's also a play about people changing class. And specifically, we tend to make verbatim theatre. That's our method of making work. And particularly with Mobile, we accrued this awesome research from a sociologist called Sam Friedman, who donated these transcripts to us that he had conducted whilst writing his thesis on the effects of rapid upward social mobility. In particular, he was interviewing people about how people experience emotional, detachment from their families when they have had experienced rapid upward mobility. And so this was really interesting to us. And we sort of, we cut and edited snippets, I guess, of some of these transcripts. I want to call them characters because in our show they are the characters. So these characters' stories, and we had to find creative ways of putting those together. So the play, you meet Cindy, you meet myself or Georgie Coles, the other actress that plays her, and it's almost as though the audience is there to interview Cindy, quite like Sam interviewed his interviewees, if that's the right word. I don't know what the right word for that is. So it's almost like you're there to interview us, and then we sit and we tell you our story, but it's not kind of straightforward. There's a lot that happens in between. There's a lot of magic. There's a lot to look at. There's a lot of technical wizardry that emerges throughout the caravan.
There is, and it's really quite effective, but it starts off just with your character chatting to the audience and asking them questions. It starts off quite interactive before you start on your monologue. But how do you get that balance? How do you get that transition between having a chat and then it's kind of hard to get that right, isn't it? Just suddenly going into performance, which isn't just a natural chat. They're all, like you said, all these technical elements are going on at the same time. How do you get that balance right?
I don't know. It's hard. The intention was that when we meet the audience, we greet them outside of the caravan, and we do interact with them, and we do get people to almost play a game with us. I'm not going to say too much about what the game is, which actually emerged from workshop exercises that we conducted with some different schools and community groups when we were working in Kent, when we were researching and developing the show. And the game worked so well, and it lent itself so well to planting the seeds of what the show is about, that we decided to keep it as part of the show. And the feedback that we tended to get from audiences was about how that really puts the audience at ease, because what's only natural is that everyone feels slightly apprehensive that they're going to enter this really small space with strangers. They're going to have to sit real close together. They don't know what's going to happen to them in there. And so, it breaks down a few barriers before we step inside of the caravan. And then once inside, it's all about have a biscuit, get yourselves comfy. And my first monologue, if you like, is very naturalistic, very talking to the audience as though I'm truly welcoming them into my home, because it needs that element of naturalism before we can bend the rules a little bit and go a little bit more abstract. People need to feel settled and grounded in there, because if the moment they step inside there, it's all, magic and craziness happening, then I think people would feel a little bit, I don't know, uneasy.
Yeah, I thought it was really nice at the end that you revealed the wizard behind the curtain. He's sat in, because you're in a caravan, sat behind a door is the person who's making all of this work, because there is a lot involved. They've got screens behind the windows to make it feel like you're moving. I don't want to give everything away, but that in particular, you do actually feel like you're moving because everything's moving past the windows, and the kettle talks to you, and all of that. It's got to be smooth. It's got to be slick, hasn't it, for it to work? Otherwise, you're left holding the baby, so to speak. Eh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's funny because you do come up against such different technical difficulties to what you'd normally when you're working in the theatre. So, for example, the other day we were playing in Kent, heat wave. It's like 32 degrees outside. The caravan was absolutely boiling, and one of the mini projectors turned itself off. So the kettle you didn't see him say one of his speeches, because actually it turned itself off with the heat, which you don't normally experience in a theatre. So actually then Darren, who's there, and he's the creative technologist that's made all this happen, he's then on the ground thinking, okay, how do I keep that projector alive? And then he's got to plug in this mini fan that's got to sit and it's got to blow itself right at that projector to keep it even cooler. So it's continual new developments that we're constantly trying to keep the magic happening.
Yeah, technology and heat don't tend to go very well together. And when you're in a caravan in unusually warm weather, I suppose it's difficult. Bonnie, you're the producer. What particular challenges are there for a producer for this type of work?
The unknown, I think, really. I mean, it's part of what attracted us to wanting to create this show in this way. But for us as a company, our normal place of work is in a studio theatre or in a mid-scale theatre. We're a very experienced company at, how to do a get-in and a week-long run at the West Yorkshire Playhouse or at Soho Theatre or something along those lines. We're very comfortable with that. But I guess great learning and hopefully kind of real artistic sort of challenge can come when you take all of sort of what you know away, and then actually your canvas is just quite different. And for us, one of the most exciting things, but really quite challenging as well, is having to make our own theatre space, and working with the brilliant the Media Workshop, who've created all of the audio visual design and have also helped with all of the construction, have also helped with done all of the wiring, put in all of the fans, made everything secure, everything like that. There's so much that we've had to learn about how to make things safe, how to make things exciting, how to that we wouldn't normally as a touring theatre company need to consider in the same sort of way, because we rock up and it's just there and it's set up. We've also had to do a lot more considering around kind of the psychology of the audience's journey, and so how just in a very human way, we welcome people. Even before that, like how we communicate what the experience is going to be, and then how we can help people get from the box office to wherever our caravan is going to be, and different ways of selling the show. Most things about this have been different, I would say. We've kind of taken our experience and we've made some guesses, and I'm glad to say that a lot of that has paid off. I guess the whole sort of audience experience kind of before the show and then kind of after the show, and how much people want to. Some audiences come out and they just want to talk to you for like 20 minutes about what they've just seen and they've experienced, and that's kind of really powerful and sort of overwhelming. But at the same time, just logistically, you can't be having those conversations right outside the caravan where there's a new show just sort of starting to happen, because then you're like, oh, I don't want people to hear all of this. And also, as Kylie was mentioning, the show starts outside the caravan. That wasn't something that we'd really anticipated before, this kind of sort of outpouring that can happen. Not with all audiences. Some audiences will have a kind of, more internal kind of contemplating sort of response to it. But some people who just come out and just want to, talk about what it made them feel, how it sort of resonated with them, want to say, I want you to bring the caravan to X, Y, Z and stuff like that. That just wasn't something that we'd, bargained for. So this whole first year of touring, this whole sort of summer of touring has just been a massive learning lesson for us. And the plan has always been that this is going to be a production that's going to tour for, at least 2, sort of possibly 3 years as well. So next year already we're going to be planning things kind of quite differently and taking all of our sort of learning on board, like how many shows we do a day, how realistic is it for us to program 3 weeks of performances with like 10 performances a day, 5 days a week. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of your performers, incredible performers, but that's a lot to ask. So yeah, lots has been challenging, but I definitely feel like I've been schooled in a really good way.
That's even a different economic model as well, doing several short shows a day rather than one a night in a normal theatre, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's quite a different conversation that we've needed to have with venues. I mean, this isn't a show that is going to make a huge box office return for any of the venues that we're going to. It's not going to be that commercial success. It's not going to be us selling out, a 350-seater venue, which we can very well do with other shows that we've made of that scale. This is 8 people at a time. And the politics of this show demands that the ticket prices are accessible. We can't be a political theatre company making shows about social mobility and class and then say, for this 40-minute experience, we're going to charge you £40, which is kind of what we would need to do to get anywhere near making, what we might normally make. So what our conversations have had to be with our venue partners and programmers is about the kind of the politics of this, in terms of this being a show that we can take to places where theatre might not necessarily go, that can hopefully attract people in who might not go into a theatre venue, who might be intrigued by what are these people doing in a caravan in this space. I've never seen a caravan before. I mean, the number of people who come up to you when you're setting up the caravan and putting up the gazebo and the bunting and setting out the chairs, are like, what are you doing here? It's like, we're entering people's sort of community public space, and then people are intrigued. I mean, that's exciting as a theatre maker, to be intriguing people in such an immediate way.
It's like the circus coming to town, isn't it? The actual putting up with the big top is part of the experience of it coming to town, isn't it?
Yeah. The other day, outside the Marlow Theatre the other day, somebody came up to us and said, what are you demonstrating about?
You said inequality.
And in a sense, you are a political theatre company. You say it's a political message, but it's a very personal message as well. So what went into the devising process? It's a personal message, a personal journey about, well, what I boiled it down to is it's about class, obviously, which you said it's about. But it's about looking back at where you've come from and being proud that you've moved on, but feeling guilty about looking down on your roots as well. So, what went into the devising process? What have you went into the devising process?
Well, the piece was co-written by myself and Gemma, the director, Gemma McDonnell, and we had lots of discussion about where we've come from, about our parents being from very humble working class roots, about, I don't know, we would discuss all sorts about the types of things that were around in our childhood, the things we'd watch on TV, the things we'd eat, the things that we'd do as a family on holiday, and, you know, caravans or camping and things like that. But also that was quite important for us was that the industry that we find ourselves in now and the education we've had. So we've been to university, we've gotten a degree in theatre. We went and we did a master's degree in theatre. And do you know what I mean? So like the things that have changed now with our lifestyles as well, it really resonated. Some of these stories, these verbatim transcripts that we'd received, they rang true. And not in the sense that we now earn six-figure salaries like some of those transcripts say. But I don't know. It's, you know, it's the everydayness about it. It's, you know, the food that you drink, like the places that you go on holiday. You know, it's all of that. And lots of the character Cindy is, you know, it's an amalgamation of things that Gemma and I threw into the melting pot and said, yeah, this resonates for me. But it's also stuff that we've kind of pinched from some of the characters, the transcripts that we've collected as well. So yeah, but it is very much, yeah. There's a lot of Gemma and I in there. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that has been emphasised with the referendum result when people are looking back. And a lot of people, like ourselves, look back with amazement that so many people had that opinion when none of the people that we mix with seem to have that opinion. So that class difference, that amazement that there are so many people who are so different to us, that's been emphasised, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And, you know, we've all got people in our families who have voted different to how we voted. And so, yeah, so that's really prevalent as well, I guess, that particular vote, that issue, I guess, has really, really segregated lots of people, lots of families even, yeah.
This is part of a trilogy I noticed from the programme. This is the second part. The first part was called Broke. So how does the trilogy go together?
Quite honestly, we don't yet know what our third show is going to be in the trilogy. Something that's been really important to us is that in the trilogy we wanted to sort of play around with form. We felt like that was quite an exciting and powerful way to go about reaching different sorts of audiences in different sorts of ways. That's how we like to work. That's what we think is important about the work that one of the things that we think is really important about the work we made. So our first show, Broke, was a fairly recognisably Paperbird show. It was a very successful studio theatre show that's now toured 3 times. It's a great show, and I guess it was very much about the issues which are still very prevalent today. So we were looking at a young mother who is very much struggling to get by and reliant on food banks, and looking at a kind of an analysis of how money works in our society currently. The second is Mobile. So this is our first site-specific piece. The third piece, correct me if you have any different feelings here, Kai, but I think we're looking at this being a larger scale piece. I think that feels like that's the natural kind of progression from doing a studio show to a really intimate piece. It feels like we want to do something that's kind of quite large in scale. We've been talking about something that may well involve participation in some sort of way, but we don't know what. But I can say that what we would be really, really excited to do is to be able to find a big pot of money so that we can mount all 3 shows next to each other to demonstrate the breadth and to kind of really tell that kind of narrative about class through the kind of Paperbird's view, basically. Is that about right, Kai?
Yeah, I think so. It's funny because we are stabbing in the dark a bit because our artistic director Gemma, she's on maternity. So we're having this conversation, but this is one that we've had maybe about 8 months ago. So we're still we think it's this, we think it's that. But we haven't been in a room with Gemma since Mobile opened, and we've felt we can finally go, because, it was all geared towards that, opening this new show. And now it's open. We've just done the first tour. We finished yesterday. And so now we need to, when Gemma comes back to work in September, we'll be like, okay, first on the agenda? What are we doing? What's the plan for the next 6 months regarding part 3 of the trilogy, which is really exciting to us.
At the end of the first tour, then, what do you think? Reflecting back, what were the reactions you got? What was memorable about those first performances?
So much, actually. It's really nice. Lots of people say to me, "Wow, I've never been in anything that immersive. I've never sat right in the centre of it all happening around me before," and that's really nice. People often ask me, "What is it like to perform? How do you feel when you're that close to everybody?" And I've kind of gotten used to it now. I remember the previews that we did at the Marlow Theatre. There's a prop that I use all the time, which is a china teacup and saucer. And I remember picking it up and it just jittering like in my hand because I was shaking. I was so nervous and it was just shaking. And I was like, put that cup down, just so it stopped shaking in front of everybody's face. But once we settled into it, bearing in mind, when you're doing 10 shows a day, what normally takes you 2 weeks to really settle into a show so that you know every single word, you know every single movement bang on, what normally takes 2 weeks actually takes 2 days in this show, because 2 days later you've already done 20 shows. So we did settle into it really, really quickly. And what's so lovely about this show is that everybody can identify with it, whether you've experienced upward social mobility or not, whether you ever sit and think and dissect the class issue or not. There's something in that show that resonates with you because everybody's come from somewhere, everybody's had a family, at some point. And do you know what I mean? So everybody, that's what's really nice. But there's one thing that really sticks in my mind, and that's the fact that we've taken it over the past 2 months to so many different places. We've been to schools, we've been on high streets, we've been outside theatres, we've been at community centres, museums, festivals, like it's been everywhere. And there was one day that we went to a school in Kent, and there was a little lad, well, I say little lad, he was in year 10, and he was on work experience. His work experience was he wanted to be a drama teacher. So they'd stuck him in the drama department for work experience. So he was going to be essentially our runner all day. He was going to be hanging out with us at the caravan. So he came into the first show and he watched it and he loved it. And then I saw him going into the next show as well. And I was like, "Oh, you already went in, didn't you? Like, is there enough space? Is that okay for you to?" And he was like, yeah. I'm the work experience. I'm going to go in again. I was like, okay. Then he went in again. Then he went in again. And this lad watched the show 5 or 6 times in a row. And afterwards I said to him, "Tyler, how are you watching this over and over?" And he was like, "Well, it's funny because the first time I watched it, I was just totally immersed, like I was just watching it happen around me. The second time I watched it, I was trying to figure out how everything works, like where does that projector come from, how's that doing that, and trying to figure it all out. The third time he watched it, he said, I was just watching everybody's reactions. I was watching their surprise or their reactions on their faces and thinking, oh yeah, I felt like that at that bit. And I just found it so endearing that this lad was so taken with it that he would sit and watch it 5 or 6 times in a row. It was just beautiful.
Yeah, that is how you feel when you know something well. I'm sure, Bonnie, you know as a producer, or if you've directed something, or if you know a show really well, you do stop watching the production. You start watching the reactions. You start reacting to their reactions, don't you? Laughing at them laughing or something.
Definitely. I'm a bit addicted generally to watching how theatre audiences react. Once I've seen a show, firsthand myself, I then find that just such an engaging, that live experience. It can, and in this situation of mobile, you are sat right opposite half of the audience wherever you're sat. That's the nature of being in a caravan. So it's kind of it's great for my audience watching sort of tendencies. But I would say as well, some of the feedback that we had at Latitude actually from audiences was that they were really engaging with each other as audience members. I don't know if it was particularly because of that sort of festival kind of vibe, and people are much more likely to kind of interact and how are you doing, and I'm not sure, but there were definitely experiences where both performers kind of came out and sort of said, that was a particularly this kind of mood, or that was a particularly the other kind of mood. It's like one person started a sort of a sensation or a feeling, like one woman just started sobbing at one point, and then that kind of sob spread around the caravan, and then there were just like all of these sort of, sort of tissues and sort of tears, and then everyone was kind of consoling each other, and then they all kind of got together. And it's like for all of this to be happening in such an intimate space, I don't know, it's kind of like there's a performance happening within the audience. That's not something that we've orchestrated to kind of, get the audience to sort of react in a particular way. Once in the caravan, there's nothing required of the audience as such. But I just find it interesting that in such an intimate space, those feelings can kind of seemingly spread. I don't know.
Mobile from the Paper Birds is a co-commission from Live Theatre and the Marlow Theatre, which will be touring again in 2017. For more information, see www.thepaperbirds.com. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.